Just wanted to let parents know that we are recording just in case we say something and you want to listen to it again, or for any of those viewers that may not be on the call tonight, but wanted to know what we were talking about. So as I said, that Sacred Heart is a school that awards New York State Regents diplomas. Sacred Heart not only administers these Regents, but we go one step beyond. We require additional credits of all of our graduates to earn what we call is a Sacred Heart diploma. That's on top of a Regents diploma. What I'd like to do is in a few minutes, I'm going to share my screen and I'm going to show you what that Sacred Heart diploma looks like. We have 99.5% of our graduating seniors this year earning an advanced Regents diploma or higher. Or higher means that it's an advanced Regents diploma with honors. 33%, about a third of our class, is earning this advanced Regents diploma with honors. And that means that they have a 90% or higher average of a combination of all of the Regents that they've ever taken throughout their high school career. These students are earning that advanced Regents diploma with honors. And that's important for you to know because I'm going to mention it later. A Sacred Heart diploma is awarded when a student earns a total of 30 credits. A New York State Regents diploma only requires 22 credits. How we arrive at these 30 credits is noted on our course description guide. And I'm just going to show you our course description guide right now. I wanted to share a particular page. The course description guide is on our Sacred Heart website under academics, and it says course guide for 2020-2021. And here I wanted to show you a few things. One is, I mentioned, what is a SHA diploma? And our requirements here with an advanced Regents diploma is a minimum of 30 credits, 4 years of 20 hours of service each year, community service, successful completion of a term paper in their junior year, and the passing of all senior courses by graduation. So this is, in addition to that, 4 credits in theology, 4 credits in English, social studies, world language, mathematics, science, music, art, 1 credit. Gym is 2 credits over 4 years. Health is a half year, computers, public speaking, and electives, all totaling 30 credits. There's different things that you can read about. I wanted to show that to you. And I also wanted to point out to you this projected programs for Sacred Heart students so that you could see that as a student, here's freshman, then a sophomore, then junior, and a senior, what typical classes they may take. And I'm particularly calling to your attention, and we'll discuss it in more detail with Mrs. Mallon, but I wanted you to see the progression of algebra, geometry, algebra 2 trig, or geometry, algebra 2 trig, pre-calc, calc, just so you can see that. And I want to show you the credit distribution of how the sequence of classes will be. So in AP Environmental Science as well, here's AP Environmental Science, Chemistry, Physics, and so on. As you may have read in the newspapers recently, the New York State Education Department has waived requirements for Regents to count towards diplomas. For this particular year, a student will not have to take a Regents in order to graduate from school. And if they did take the Regents, they do not, that Regents, they're all exempt. Everyone is exempt. However, New York State is asking that we administer the Regents and that students take the Regents. And I'm going to go into some reasons why. They've asked us to administer 4 Regents examinations, but since Sacred Heart doesn't offer earth science, we are offering 3 out of the 4. We'll be offering the Algebra Regents, the Living Environment Regents, and we'll also be offering the English language Regents to our 11th graders. In addition, we'll be requiring all students, except for seniors, to sit for finals in all of their major subjects. Tomorrow night, I'll be doing a similar talk to the students and families in grades 9 through 11 at Shaw, just to outline to them the schedule of examinations that we're going to be giving. So the question is, why are culminating finals so important? Throughout high school and college finals, throughout high school and college, finals are given to help students pull together the knowledge from a long period of time, to see how well a student has grasped the entire subject matter. In addition, teachers can then analyze the results of these tests to examine what concepts the students have retained and which ones need to be emphasized more in the following years. Taking finals is an experience that tests students not only on their knowledge, but also on their stamina to take a longer examination. Regents exams are 3 hours in length. Our midterms and finals at Shaw are 1 hour and 45 minutes. These experiences only come but once or twice a year, but they're meant to help students develop skills that will be used in the future in college. I would be remiss in not recognizing the fact that students have missed out on these experiences due to the pandemic that has occurred over the past year. We did not offer Regents or finals last year. We administered only midterms this year for students who had signed up for a college credit bearing course. And the experience of taking culminating exams, as it is important for preparation in that, these students really missed out on this experience, and we acknowledge that. I'm sure that many were very grateful. Yes, some students were very, very happy that we had canceled finals last year. Very, very happy that we canceled midterms. But we fear that continuing to miss out on these opportunities will have longer lasting effects in a negative way. Although the year has brought us many new challenges, we were very happy at Sacred Heart that most of our students were all in and came to school every day. If they did not, they were on remotely due to illness or quarantining, but many students did not miss a beat. At one point of the year, our teachers thought they might be a chapter behind a typical year, but most had reported that they're on target now for finishing up their curriculum and will be reviewing for finals. During the week that we normally would have midterms, we decided to have classes instead, and that gave us a little extra time as well. This is excellent news. We wanted to take stock of how we've done this year, and that's why we're giving finals too. Despite living through this pandemic, we're very confident if what we've achieved and giving finals, it'll help us to evaluate if we're on target or if we have missed something. Our finals only count for 10% of the final grade. So just remember that. In other words, before taking a final this year, our 9th through 11th grade students will have completed 90% of their grade in that course. We believe that finals will help to validate our averages and that most students will be very successful. Colleges also have reported to us that they appreciate the fact that we did not give pass-fail grades last year. Although they did not hold that against any school that did, they just appreciated the fact that we did give grades. In order to be placed in Geometry 9, now we're talking about you, 8th graders going into 9th grade, we're requiring students to take a placement test. And before I speak about the Regents, I would like to introduce Mrs. Mallon for you, who's already made up the Geometry Regents exam and will be sharing with you what main concepts are on the exam, so you can all be ready. Mrs. Mallon?
Thank you, Mrs. Crystal. And thank you all for joining us. I'm here tonight because I want to try and ease any apprehension you have about the math placement test. We want the students to be successful in geometry, but in order for that to happen, they need a strong foundation in algebra. And also, after geometry comes Algebra 2. You can imagine Algebra 2 is not easy if your Algebra 1 skills are not in place. So we've designed a test that focuses on the fundamentals for algebra. Don't worry if you haven't quite finished the curriculum. We know that the last couple of chapters that are done are usually probability and statistics. So we've left those off the placement test in case your child has not been able to get to those. What we've put on the test are the basics that every person who has successfully completed an algebra course would need to know and would be expected to know. I believe Mrs. Crystal has a list that she can share here that I gave her of topics that will be on the test.
It's coming.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's okay.
Let me get out of that.
Well, while she's finding that list of topics, we are hoping that the students will take the Regents. I don't know what we're coming from many schools. I don't exactly know what the requirements are in your school or what they are expecting the students to take. I mean, here at Sacred Heart, we are expecting the students to be taking the Regents. And we will be grading those placement tests the week after they take them. That, I believe, is the week of May 18th. We'll be grading those placement tests and determining whether the skills are in place to go into geometry. Okay, so there's, I guess, a list of topics there that you could either screenshot or look at later when you see the recording. And Mrs. Crystal, are we taking questions at this time, or are we waiting till science is finished?
I had just a few questions that I think you answered. When might the parents expect the results of the exam?
Right, so we're grading it hopefully that week of the 18th. So by the end of May, we should have those results ready for the parents.
Okay. And what is the passing grade? This is a question that had been submitted to me in the past. What's the passing grade for the exam?
Well, we're looking at the exam is designed so that students cannot just like plug in the answers, plug in the choices and get answers. Most of the tests, they will have to show their work. There are a few multiple choice questions, but most of it is free response. And we're going to be looking at the whole picture of this. So, if they made a little mistake at the end, that doesn't mean that they didn't understand the algebraic procedure. And that's what we're really looking at. So we're kind of going to judge the test. I don't have an exact score yet because we're going to judge it from what we see their skills are.
Great. So it's not like you have to have a 65 or above to pass it.
Correct. Correct.
Just really the holistic view of what they know.
Of their algebraic skills. They need a sufficient amount of algebraic skills in order to be successful in geometry. And that's what we want. We want them to be successful in geometry.
Great. And how would you advise a parent to react to the scores? So I guess there's not going to be a score. It's going to be more of whether you recommend.
Correct. It's going to be more of, yes, we feel you have the sufficient algebra skills to advance to geometry, or a recommendation that, you need to retake algebra because perhaps your equation solving skills are not in place or your graphing skills are not in place. And then it would be a repeat of algebra.
And if that happens, I just threw this up on here. What happens if a student then takes algebra next year?
Okay, so that means they're in the traditional high school program. They take algebra, geometry, algebra 2, and pre-calculus. That does not mean they're not in honors. We start honors on the sophomore level, regardless of whether they're in the traditional program or the accelerated program. So if they're in algebra, they could very well in 10th grade go into geometry honors and then algebra 2 honors. And then if they're really very ambitious and have been doing very well in that and really want to be taking the calculus, they can take pre-calculus in the summer and then still get that experience of calculus in senior year.
So that's still a possibility to catch up, so to speak. If
Correct.
Maybe
correct. I have three girls in my calculus class this year that took it over the summer and they're doing quite well. They took pre-calc over the summer and they're doing well.
And this might be because they're going to be science majors or math majors,
right,
or becoming a doctor, or whatever it is that they need.
Correct. but they did not start out as accelerated students. They, matter of fact, two out of the three I also had in ninth grade when they were in algebra. So they started in algebra. They were not in the accelerated program, but then they moved into the honors, geometry honors and algebra 2 honors. And then they took pre-calc in the summer. I believe they, two out of the three took it at Nassau Community. Another one, I believe, took it remotely from an upstate school. And they're now in calculus.
So now you also mentioned here, so why or why not might it be helpful for any of these students to, in addition to taking the placement exam, also take the New York State Algebra Regents?
Well, it's a good experience for them to have a Regents before they take that geometry Regents. The geometry Regents tends to be a challenging one for students all across the state. And having that experience of having done a Regents already and knowing the intensity of it and the length of it can't hurt. It's a win-win situation there. We could also, after they've taken the placement, if they're really on the fence as far as we're not sure, should we take this person? They're really kind of borderline, not sure if we should advance them into geometry or not, but then they knock it out of the park on the Regents, that would tip the scales for us.
And I did have a couple of questions. So are Regents that are taken in 8th grade included in the 30 credits? It's an excellent question. And we do not count credits. A Shaw diploma is purely credits at Shaw. That means that everyone starts with 0 credits. And when they start, they need to take 4 years of math. Because if we counted algebra in that credit, then they could maybe not take math in their senior year. And that is not the intent of a Shaw diploma. Shaw diploma is taking 4 years of math, 4 years of science when you're at Shaw. So those 30 credits all start in 9th grade. A question, my daughter is taking the Regents in her middle school. Does she need to take Regents at Sacred Heart as well? I don't believe so, right? I mean, there's no reason. If she's taking the Regents, it's at the same time, the same in her middle school, and that's where she should take it, correct?
Yes, if she's taking the algebra Regents at her elementary school, she would be taking it exactly when we're taking it at Sacred Heart. There's no reason for her to come over to Sacred Heart to take it. She would take it, and she'll be more comfortable taking it there anyway.
And somebody's asking, very, very good question. What is the date of the geometry placement test? And the date is Saturday, May 15th at 8 a.m. It will be 1 hour and 45 minutes, and parents will be able to pick up their students just before 10 o'clock. So if they're there at 8, to pick them up at 10, that should be enough time. The drop off and the pickup, we're going to be putting this all in writing, right? Mrs. Steins will be doing that. Drop off and pickup will be in the back of the school. Students will be wearing masks, of course, should be healthy coming to the school, as they will be temperature checked at the door. We're going to have students potentially coming in, and we'll have them seated far apart. We're going to have a number of students taking this exam. It'll be in our gymnasium, so we're going to be spreading students apart, be taking the test. So
Mrs. Crystal, can I just add one word? I did send out an email communicating the date and the time of the math placement test. So if you are planning to send your daughter for the test and you have not received an email from me, if you can please send me a note just so I make sure I have her. There's no formal registration for the exam, but we do have a list of every incoming student who's registered for geometry. So all of those students would have received an email from me communicating the timing and the date of the exam. I will, next week, the week leading up to it, send out the logistics email with arrival, which door to come in and all of that, like Mrs. Crystal just mentioned. But again, if you did not get an email, please make sure you reach out to me. My email is msteins, So M is in Mary, STINES at sacredheartacademyli.org, or you can just reply to the admissions email box that we send from, just so I make sure that you're receiving my communication. And a reminder, every email that we send is housed on our website under admissions. There is a tab called important information for class of 2025. So just a good idea to keep a habit of checking that, weekly as we go through the next few weeks and months, so you're not missing anything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Stein. Were you able to also see, I made you a host so that you could see some of the questions?
I still can. I can't see any questions.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'm happy to help you read them because I know how difficult.
Sure, sure. No, I've got a few more here. So, and they're,
Oh, I got them now.
okay, that's great.
Just one. I only see one.
Okay, it might be that I have the ones from before, so I'll finish
Okay.
with that.
They're coming. Okay, so I'll continue to ask them then, because I know it's difficult to do both, and then we'll see who's going to answer them.
Sure.
Okay, so someone wrote, I'm assuming that if your daughter is also taking the language exam that day, they just hang around when they finish the math exam.
Absolutely. Yes, that is true.
There's only a 15-minute window after, so it's not a lot of downtime.
Yeah.
Is there only one math requirement for the Regents diploma at this time? In other words, if my child takes the Algebra Regents in 8th grade and passes, has she fulfilled the requirement for math Regents?
That's for a Regents diploma, plain old Regents diploma. But a Regents diploma, an advanced Regents diploma, requires 3 Regences: algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. We call it algebra 2 trig. So someone would have to take all 3. All of our students, almost every single one of them, takes the algebra 2 Regents, the geometry Regents, and the algebra Regents, and earns an advanced Regents diploma.
Another question, what should the girls bring on the day of the exam? Pen, pencils, paper?
Yes, they should have pens, obviously pencils. They don't need any paper. The exam has everything in it, any graphs. There is a grid there already. There is area for scrap already in the exam, but they will want to bring a calculator. So if they use the TI-84 in their algebra class, which I'm guessing they probably do, that would be the calculator they would want to bring with them.
Great.
There's a question here about if my daughter is taking Math 8. So they're not taking algebra, they're taking Math 8 with fundamentals of algebra. Should she take the placement test? Can you tell me more about the Regents? I went to high school overseas.
If she's taking Math 8, she needs to take algebra next year. Okay, she needs the algebra seat hours and needs to sit through the algebra Regents course. So she would not be taking the placement test. She would be placed in algebra next year.
Okay. And then if a student passes the placement exam, can she still decide to repeat algebra if she wishes?
I don't know fundamentally if she passes it where we feel that she's gotten, right, Pat? I think if she's at that point where she should move on.
Right. It depends on if she's shaky on it or is she very strong in it. If she's very strong in it, I don't see a reason for her to repeat algebra again. It's only if she's shaky in algebra, and I think if she's shaky in algebra, that's going to come out on the placement test. It is an algebra test.
So this question has something to do with it. It says, if the student does well on the Shaw placement exam, but not the algebra Regents, will they still take geometry?
I believe the placement test we've designed, as I said, is really focusing on the algebra skills that will be needed in geometry. Now, some of the things that maybe she had a problem with in algebra on the algebra Regents, she may find that those resurface again in algebra 2. But I think if she demonstrates a sufficient knowledge of algebra on the placement test, she can go into geometry.
And then someone asked, if you're taking the algebra Regents, is it necessary to take the placement exam as well? Yes.
The placement exam has to be taken for anyone who wants to go into Geometry 9.
Yeah.
Anyone going into Geometry 9 must take the placement exam.
And then the question that keeps coming up, is it required to take the Algebra Regents this year for SHA?
I don't know if you want to field that, Mrs. Crystal, but we are recommending it. We certainly are expecting every one of our algebra students to be taking it.
There is an expectation that students will take it. I thought earlier when I was mentioning how good the experience will be for them, I see no reason not to take it. There are some questions about, does a passing grade on the Algebra Regents override results on the SHA placement exam? So if somebody actually does really well on the Regents, can that potentially change our mind about something, like say they didn't do well on the placement exam, but then did really well on the Regents? It potentially, could maybe turn us the other way or not. What do you think, Ms. Mallon?
Well, as I said, the placement test is designed for algebra skills. The Regents has many other things on it, as probability, as statistics. There is a grading curve on the Regents that is quite extensive.
Generous.
Yes, we're not having that extensive curve or any curve on our placement test. So I don't think that, I believe the placement test is going to be very definitive as to whether the necessary algebra skills are in place.
Great. I know this was addressed earlier. Will the students get the results from the placement exam? So I think Mrs. Mallon said they will be graded the week following the exam, and we will communicate the results with all of you.
The results might not be in the form of a number. It just might be a recommendation based on the skills.
Right. A question's come in about the language placement exam. How do they know if they are due to take it? So again, I reached out to everybody that we have on our list, and our list was created by those who registered for language 2, Spanish 2, French 2, or Italian 2. If you've registered your daughter for one of those 3 classes, you would have received an email from me. Again, there's no registration for that exam, and I will send out the logistics email for that exam next week with the arrival door and all of those details. But if you're questioning it, please send me an email, because maybe you signed up for language 1 and we need to make a change to the schedule. What if my child passes the placement test but does not do so well on the Regents?
I think that we might, I think we answered that a little bit, but I guess what might happen is, if you don't do that well on the Regents, I would say that you should contact your school and make sure that if you don't like that score, that your school puts an E for exempt, because students can choose whether or not their score carries with them through high school. And whatever we get from the elementary school is the grade or the letter that we will put on the transcript. So if we received a grade from your elementary school that's say 75, that 75 will be posted on the transcript. If your grade, if you don't like that grade of a 75, then you can ask them to put an E. But there's time factors of that, and you have to make sure it's very clear to your elementary school that what you want to do with that grade. New York State has told us that they are giving options for students to either have an E, and even if they fail it, they're saying that you can still change it to an exemption. So there should be no harm for you to attempt these exams. If you do well, we really want you to put that grade on the transcript and have that on your transcript forever and ever, because we might be able to use it for an advanced Regents diploma with honors. So we really would like for you to do that.
Great. Somebody's asking how many questions will be on the placement exam.
There are 10 multiple choice questions and 20 free response questions.
Great. And then someone says, okay, you mentioned using the TI 84 calculator. In our school, we use the Desmos graphic calculator, which is on their computer. Will that be an option for them? She does not know how to use the TI calculator.
Well, it doesn't have to be the TI 84, but they will not be able to use a laptop or a computer. So they can get a different calculator. They
Or a
can,
phone, right? No phones.
no phones. No, they will not be able to have any electronic device like a computer or a phone or anything like that. No.
Okay, great. What is considered a solid grade for the math regions?
Well, 85 is mastery. That shows a very good foundation in algebra is the 85.
And I believe New York State tells high schools that at this point in time, an E represents an 86. Now, the 86 just allows us to use that score, that E that we would get, to factor in and to use it for distinction, to use it for anything that we need it for. So I would assume anything 86 or above, or anything, you could say 90 or above is good. You keep it on there. But at least the 85 or 86, like Ms. Mallon said, is good. And I would keep that on a transcript, and especially if your grades were in that area in particular. If it's disappointing grade for you and you don't like it and don't want it on there, of course I understand. But at the same time, it does show something that you took that exam.
I think that 85 also shows in a year when many people are not going to be taking it and many people are opting out, that 85 shows you sat for that exam and got a mastery grade. I would absolutely encourage you to put that on a transcript.
Very good. Great point. But now I'd like to, I know we have some more questions and we'll probably answer more, but I would like to turn the program over to Dr. Feynman, who can help us with the question about the course choices we made for this year's entering ninth graders, and why we felt it important to postpone chemistry in the 10th grade, but to take living environment and or AP environmental science. So if Dr. Feynman, if you can kind of explain a little bit about that and maybe entertain a few science questions.
Absolutely. So I'm hoping that science is something that you're very much looking forward to. Thank you for being here and for allowing us to invite you and welcome you to Shaw Science. We did make the decision to not offer chemistry in ninth grade. Multiple reasons, and I would tell you I've taught Chem 9 for a number of years. Obviously, ninth grade, regardless of which middle school you're coming from, is a challenge that's going to require a certain amount of adjustment. We want you to fall in love with the school as much as our other students and to really have a good experience in science. Chemistry is very rigorous. I teach Chem, Honors Chem, and AP Chem. It is a tough subject. It is math-based, using crazy words like stoichiometry, which can be very intimidating, but it's also almost like in a foreign language, because suddenly you're not talking about words that you've heard of. You're saying things like strontium, rubidium, iridium, sodium, things that perhaps are not second nature to you. So you're working in a foreign language and it's math-based. That would be a daunting prospect to any ninth grader. And while we did have students who were able to handle it, it was a little too stressful. So let me start by saying that if you are currently in either Earth Science or Science 8 as a middle schooler, you will simply be coming into living environment, and you'll be joining us to learn a little bit about biology and ecology, and it'll be a great ninth grade experience. If you have completed 8th grade living environment in middle school, you will now have the opportunity to go into AP environmental science. I want you to know you're not unique, although you might be unique to us. There are many, many students on Long Island who are taking AP environmental science as ninth graders. You might say, how could this possibly be? It's an AP class. Well, that's true, but the nature of the science is very different. AP environmental science is not math-based, and it's not chemistry-based. As a result, you have the opportunity to learn about a lot of very interesting topics that will capture the imaginations of a ninth grader. It is a perfect time to learn about climate change. It's a wonderful opportunity to learn about water and air pollution. It's an important time to learn about land justice and the social injustices of geography. It's a great opportunity to learn about the weather, about a little bit about meteorology, about biomes and ecosystems. And you might be interested in knowing that environmental science is wide open for scientists who choose to become environmental scientists, environmental engineers, and a whole host, there's even environmental lawyers at this point, a whole host of other subjects. So it is not only captivating to a young science student, but it is also not daunting, because it does, with all due respect to Mrs. Mallon, sort of remove the math piece, which we know can be intimidating to a large extent and require a lot more practice and research. You'll have the fun of doing a few labs. You'll have the enjoyment of learning and watching a number of videos that perhaps captivate you about the outside world. And you have the opportunity to do group projects with one another, all being great things to be able to do when you're an incoming 9th grader. It is very doable, certainly in line as a college preparatory school. I always like to be credible, so I will tell you that 3 of my children, who are no longer children, all took AP Environmental Sciences 9th grade. And even though I'm not going to tell you they said it was the easiest, which is what they said, it is a very, very doable and interesting science. It's very interesting to a young student. And I like the idea of being able to excite a young mind in science. Chemistry can be very rigorous. Having said that, I do want to take a moment to also, now that I've hopefully excited you about terrestrial biomes and the aquatic world of AP Environmental Science, I would like to ask you to consider, even though we are not mandating, the opportunity to take the Living Environment Regents. I'm not going to echo everything that you've already heard from Mrs. Mallon and from Mrs. Crystal, because the science is there. Cumulative exams are very important. Having the experience and understanding overarching concepts in a subject is very important. The reason why I'm actually going to encourage you to take the Living Environment Regent is because I have the joy of running the Women in Healthcare and Medicine Club, where I'm hoping I will get to meet many of your daughters. And as someone who was a former physician, now a teacher, I can tell you that they're going to sit in the Women in Health Club and Medicine group and tell me how they want to be doctors, surgeons, orthopedists, physical therapists, speech therapists, in utero, cardiovascular surgeons. You can't imagine what we hear. Those students need to understand what living environment and biology is, and they potentially want to be able to move into AP biology. Even though it's not the one I teach, AP biology is a very important AP course for many students, certainly anyone who's interested in pursuing a healthcare career. My question to you as a parent is, how do you know, how does a child know that they've fallen in love with medicine, or they've fallen in love with biology, or they want to take AP biology and do well in it, when they haven't had the opportunity to test themselves or assess themselves in living environment? So my argument is, we're not giving a placement test, but I am definitely going to encourage you to sit down and look at the opportunity to take the Living Environment Regents, because it will help you to understand whether or not this is something you have a talent in, or if it is important, and maybe your daughter knows right now that she wants to be a doctor or a nurse or a physical therapist. If it's something you may want to pursue and you're not proficient in it, you may want, not to any fault of your own, it's been a horrible year for everyone, but if you're not proficient in it, perhaps it is the better choice to then take living environment and not the AP Environmental Science. So if you want to, you don't have to do AP Environmental Science. You can choose to come in and do living environment again, potentially sit for the Regents next year, and in the future, go into AP Biology. And then later on, of course, when you finish medical school, you can be that in utero fetal surgeon. So the 2 take-home points that I really want to make is, I'd like you to be excited about taking AP Environmental Science and feel confident that I made this choice very carefully and with talking to an enormous number of other chairs of science who do administer the AP Environmental Science in the 9th grade, some who pair it up with honors biology. So it's actually a double course. So there are 9th graders who do AP Environmental Science in only 6 months. We will have the whole year to do it, worry not. But I want you to not only recognize that you have that opportunity, but that you also have the opportunity to retake living environment should you find, through taking the Regents, that maybe you're not proficient. And if you're not strong in living environment and you do want to potentially be a nurse or a physician or something in the healthcare field, that's better for you to know now than later on when you're trying to get into or succeed in AP biology. So that's did you have any other points that you wanted me to make, Mrs. Crystal, in particular? Or if not, we can go into some questions. So we don't have a specific placement test. That's not happening. It's sort of a on your own assessment, which in some ways, if you're all typical Shaw girls, you're going to be harder on yourselves than any of your teachers ever will be. I encourage you to seriously consider taking the Regents. I agree. If you don't like your grade, take the E. It's a wonderful opportunity. I never had that opportunity to actually take the test, have the experience of taking the test, seeing what you've learned and what you've not learned, and then deciding on your own, should I retake living environment, or should I go into AP Environmental Science and potentially later on do AP Biology? So it's almost like you have to have a heart-to-heart talk with yourself. Some of you girls probably have some sense of what they want to do, and if they want to go into bio later on or anything in science, AP Biology is going to be one of the things that they're going to look at in 11th and 12th grade. And while it's easy to focus on 9th grade, we would be doing you a disservice if we did that. We really need to look at the whole high school picture and the importance of looking at APs later on.
And speaking of APs, I did want to just do a postscript on that. If you're taking an AP course at Sacred Heart, we ask at registration to sort of electronically sign a contract. And that contract has a few things. One is that we want you to view the contract that's actually online, and I'll be giving everyone a link to that, but it's really the AP course outline, because we want them to see what it is. So you want to look at AP Environmental Science, you want to look at the course outline, and you want to see what's involved in it. And you've also heard a little bit about what you're going to be getting yourself into. The other thing is that we want you to know that there is an AP examination that must be taken the following year. So next May at this time, you will be sitting for an advanced placement test in environmental science. Everyone has to take it. You can't opt out and just not take it. So by sitting for this course, you will take that exam. And the other thing is that there's a cost to it because it's all sponsored through College Board. We just pass on what they charge us, and it's about $100 a test. But what that could do for you is if you score a certain score, and the scores range from 1 to 5, if you score a 3, 4, or 5, colleges will look upon that and will decide. Now, each college is different, but they may accept those credits, and in turn, you will have a college level course completed at the end of next year. So I just wanted to bring you to that, just to say that when you register, when I give you your classes for next year, I'm going to be sending that to you next week. This is what you signed up for. You're going to then, when you send it back, say, I agree to taking this AP course, and I acknowledge that I will take the course, I will review the outline, and I'll pay the $100, and I will take the exam next May. So I just wanted to throw that out there. We never had to do that for 8th graders, but now we do. We have to just have you, start realizing that those college level courses are within your grasp.
Great. There was a question about science, Dr. Feynman. So will next year be the first year that AP Environmental is offered to
Viv,
freshmen?
you done?
Yes, next year will be the first year that we've offered AP Environmental Science.
On
That's
your
correct.
shopping.
We've offered AP
Because
Environmental
What's the
Science
name of
in
your
the
science
past.
called?
It is taught at
Earth
Shaw.
science?
Yeah.
That's not, and I hear somebody else.
People are
Yeah.
taking-
Mrs. Crystal, can you mute everybody?
Yes, I'm trying. I think you're the host.
It's, oh, I'm not the host?
What are you taking?
The environment honors, I'm pretty sure.
I don't
So
know.
see if it is, right? Yeah, sorry.
I'm gonna say in our school, we take earth science. Is that called living
Can you
environment?
mute, Miss, I think
That's
it's.
not called living
But
environment.
what are people coming from now?
Living environment, it's a whole different.
Coletta, you have to mute. We can hear your conversation. Thank you.
I mean, it's very interesting, and actually you're bringing up a good point, the Coletta family, right? Because you're mentioning something about what is your daughter taking. And it's funny because I think a lot of parents might not even know what their daughter is taking now in elementary school. And it's very, very important that you know, because if they're taking living environment and they're going to take a Regents, then they're going to be placed in AP Environmental Science next year. If they're taking Earth Science now, whether or not they're going to take that Earth Science Regents is totally up to them. Maybe that's a
And
question.
they'd be coming into living environment. So if you're taking earth science, that is not what we all called biology in the old days. Earth science is different. It's 8th grade class. You'd be coming into 9th grade at Shaw and taking living environment.
Okay. Somebody wrote, what if you take the living environment Regents and do very well? Can you decide to take AP Environmental Science even though you selected to take living environment again?
If you do very well and you've sat through living environment, you should certainly take AP Environmental.
Okay, my daughter is taking Earth Science and is being given the option of taking the Regents or opting out and just taking the final. I'm not sure what to do. What would you recommend?
Again, just to reiterate, it's always a good idea to take a cumulative final, a cumulative exam, or a Regents. It's just a way of sort of putting the period at the end of a concept. Environmental science is also based on earth science, so you never know. She might find that she loves earth science and wants to pursue environmental science as a career. There are many colleges that offer that as a major now. But if she's finishing earth science, and whether she takes the Regents or not, she'd be coming into living environment as a 9th grader.
And then if a student takes the Earth Science Regents, will the grade appear on her transcript?
No, because that is not a Shaw Regents.
So can you repeat that question? Because I just want to make sure.
Sure. If a student takes the Earth Science Regents, will the grade appear on her transcript?
We do post Earth Science grades on the transcript. We do post them, even though it's just the Regents grade, it's not the credit from the course. Because New York State, if you take a Regents, it is posted. And that's why if the student likes the grade and wants the grade will be posted on their transcript. If the student doesn't like the grade, they have to contact their elementary school and make sure that an E goes in that elementary school record, because we are going to take whatever's on the elementary school record and put it on there. So there are things that we post on the transcript before the student gets here, and it's the Algebra Regents grades, whether it's an E or not, whether they were supposed to take it or not, and it's either the grade or an E. And the same thing with Earth Science. It's either a grade or E. So we do have it in there because it can count for something along the way. So that's why it can count as an added science Regents, but just Regents. And if it's a high enough number, it can count in that way. But in terms of credits don't start until 9th grade, because we want students to take 30. Yes, technically they have credits from elementary school, but we need students to take 30 credits at Sacred Heart. And somebody asked a question about theology. Of course, yes, 4 of those 30 credits along the way will be theology, and that is not in a public school or in another setting. So we have that. So if anything, we have 26 credits of everything else plus 4 credits of theology.
Great. And then a couple of people are asking, can we change course selections after we get the Regents scores?
I'm going to say it's okay. I think I would entertain it depending on the backing of it. You know, if it's something that we can do and you're recommended for it and you've done well, the thing is I would err on the high side and rather, you know, if you're thinking about taking AP Environmental and you're in living environment now, doing well in the course, think you can do well in the Regents, then I would go into AP Environmental. And if you have to switch that now, I'd rather know now. So I'm going to be sending a course verification for you next week. And then at that time, if you can make the decision, it would just help us because we are trying to hire teachers and know how many sections we have. And that would be good. But afterwards, I mean, you can always call me at the end of after taking the Regents. I'll be working most of the summer, so it's certainly fine to discuss. But we tell all of our students that we don't make any changes into after the last day of school. So I don't think you'll get your Regents back in time for that, but I'll certainly entertain it.
Okay. There's a lot of questions, or a handful, I should say, about calculators. A lot of students are using iPads as calculators and they don't have a TI. So either recommendation on what they should get, maybe they could borrow. My recommendation was if you can find a friend that has a TI calculator, get a little familiar with it and borrow it instead of, but will they need it next year, Mrs. Mallon?
Yes, they will need it in all of the math courses at Sacred Heart.
Okay, so it's probably a good investment to make.
Yes.
And get
Yes.
familiar with it before the exam.
TI
Somebody,
before. Mhm.
This was recorded. I know we just had a question that somebody joined late. What is Shah's recommendation on taking Regents? The summary is, the recommendation is to take the Regents. Someone said, can you explain why an 8th grade Regent score would be on a Shah transcript?
It's a New York State law, well, I think regulation or something, that every Regents a student takes needs to be posted on their transcript. So we have to do that. But we don't this year have to put a number. We can put an E for exempt. So if you were in line to take the course and you don't sit for the Regents, we're going to put an E regardless, as long as your elementary school, middle school, junior high school puts the E on the transcript that they send us, the report card that they send us. We just have to make sure that you were in a bona fide course, that you were passing that course, doing well in that course, and that your course was going to culminate in a Regents. And you'll get the credit. Mhm.
Okay, and then we had a question from a Latin school family. So their daughter is taking the Regents at Sacred Heart since it's not offered at Kellenberg.
Right.
The question is, who will receive the score? We'll get the score at Sacred Heart, right, Mrs. Crystal?
Yes. Mhm.
And we'll share the score, obviously, with you.
Yes.
What other exam is being offered on May 15th? It's the language exam. So if you put down language 2 for your daughter for next year, you would have received an email from us confirming her requirement to take the placement exam. If someone said about their daughter taking the FLAX exam, should she be going into Italian 2? That's your choice. She certainly should be taking the placement test if she wants to be considered for Italian 2. And the result of that exam will determine if she is placed into 2 or recommended to repeat 1. I said earlier, if you are questioning if you should be taking the exam, if you want to send me an email, when tomorrow morning, I'll look at our list and happy to get back to you. I did send an email out confirming everybody who we had on our list based on the course registrations. And the math again is at 8 a.m. and the language exam is at 10 a.m. My daughter's been taking Spanish for 3 years, would like to take French in high school. That's fine. She could go right into French 1. There's no placement test for that. What is the deadline to say whether you will take the Regents or opt out?
That has to do, I think you're going to need to speak to
Your school.
your school. I know that there might be, you can talk to your school and tell them that you're going to be taking a placement exam. If the placement exam goes well, I think it's a great practice for the Regents as well, the placement exam, for them to sit for an hour and 45 minutes and take that test. So I think even
Someone else wrote, do you recommend a student purchasing a Regents exam book? I mean, if they're in the course, I don't think they should need the book, right?
It's just for extra practice. I do know that students are graduating from 8th grade and they might have like 2 weeks before the Regents. So, if you have any way of taking some kind of prep.
There are many good Regents books out on the a market for algebra Regents, and it's the more practice you do, the better you're going to do on the exam. So if you have not actually, if you didn't actually sit down and take an actual practice exam or several of them, you're at a disadvantage to the students that have taken several practice exams. So you really do want to do that.
And there is, just so you know, for free, you can go back in time to New York State Ed Regents. If you just even Google the Algebra Regents, you can find all past Regentses for how many years, right, Miss Mallon? For several years.
Yes, at jmap.org, they go back many, many years on all the different Regents exams. So, you have that for free. They have not only the exams, but they have the answer keys of the exams all worked out.
Great. So a question is being asked. This is actually very important. If a student is due to take the Regents, they said, where should they be taking them? So if you're in a school, your school should be offering the Regents. We know the Latin school does not offer the Regents. But if your school is not for some reason offering the Regents, please reach out to myself or Mrs. Crystal, and we can have a conversation to see if we can offer, for you to take it with us at SHA.
Depends also if you're actually in an algebra course. Many students think they're in an algebra course, but they're actually in a pre-algebra course called Math 8. So if you're in Math 8, you'll be taking algebra with us next year. Probably about half of the students go into algebra and half of the students go into geometry. So you could potentially be going into algebra next year. But if you're taking a bona fide algebra course that would culminate and you're taking the curriculum for Regents, then potentially you can take that exam. But we have to discuss that with your school.
But anyone who is not actually in algebra this year will not be sitting for our placement test.
Exactly.
My daughter will be repeating algebra next year. She is not a math student, but she's going to take the Regents for practice. Which grade will be posted on her SHA transcript? The higher one?
Yes, exactly. Well, both of them, the first one, this year's score will be posted. And then as soon as you take another exam, we look at both scores because you cannot have two scores of a Regents on a transcript. Always the higher one trumps. So if she takes the exam this year and does pretty well, and then next year she takes it again and does worse, which shouldn't happen, but we would always take the higher of the two scores. That's what New York State tells us to do. We have to put the higher score of the Regents on the transcript.
Another question. If you're not sure if your school is offering the Regents, please send Mrs. Crystal or myself an email after this meeting, and we'll handle you on a one-on-one basis to, of course, accommodate you as best we can. Somebody else is asking about the TI calculator. Is it similar? I would buy the TI calculator. You're going to need it next year.
Right, the TI-84 is very popular. It's in all the stores. It will be a worthy investment. You will use it for 4 years here at Sacred Heart. But to reiterate, you will not be able to use laptops, iPads, phones, or any electronic devices as a calculator.
At the placement test.
I would
Correct.
buy, yeah, and someone else would buy the calculator, this week. The placement exam is on the 15th. Your daughter can get familiar with it, the week leading up to the exam. Is it hard to learn? I don't, Mrs. Mallon, is it a very hard calculator to learn?
No, the students are very technologically savvy. They pick it up very quickly. And for the amount, there's many things on it that they will not need to be using for the algebra exam. So the basic things that they would need for the algebra exam are very simple to learn.
Okay. Yeah, so I think a lot of these questions are repeats. I just want to repeat to everybody that's out there. I know we had some families joined a little bit late. Mrs. Crystal went into great detail about her recommendation on taking the Regents and why she recommends it and why it's important. So I would urge you all, if you need to hear it again, or if you missed it, to just review. This will be up tomorrow. We'll have it posted. So, even if you just want to watch the first 10 or 15 minutes just to hear from Mrs. Crystal on her recommendations.
And, I just want to also mention too, as we wind up this hour, and I want to thank everybody for coming tonight, that your daughter best. And we understand that some students have gone through a lot of difficult times, and I can certainly understand that. If your daughter has done well in math and science, we would certainly encourage you to have them take the exam. The experience cannot hurt them, as we mentioned, and they'll gain a lot of confidence each time they take an exam. And as Mrs. Mallon pointed out, when you take that exam, that, even in algebra, it's just going to be helpful again when you take it the following year when you're taking it for geometry. The downside you might be thinking about is whether or not this might deflate them. Like if they don't do well, it's okay. We understand these are tests that students might get nervous at. If they don't do well, it's okay also, but just kind of use that information to make a good decision on placement. Like I said, your child the best, but if you can reiterate that whatever the outcome, they will still win by just having experienced the exam. With COVID moving in such in some way, a positive direction that I don't think that we'll actually ever have this opportunity like this to experience with no strings attached again. Like this is very, very unique and it has never happened. So I feel like you can take advantage of it. And if your daughter does well, that grade will be on her transcript. The grade could be used, especially if it's a 90 or better, as a grade that we can calculate to get an advanced Regents diploma with honors. And usually algebra and living environment are amongst the easiest of the Regencies that are out there. But I do know that, you know, we take students from over 50 different districts at all different levels. We have students that only went remote this year in 8th grade, or some hybrid, or some all in, but whatever your background is, we know your school has tried the very best to give you the very best education. And sometimes, you know, just because of the circumstances, it may not be the best, but let's see what happens. And the worst thing that could happen is you have an E on your transcript, and that's for exempt. So really is nothing to lose out. But what's most important, however, obviously we must sit for this geometry placement exam. And we will work with students if somebody has a dire conflict. We will work with students as much as we can. Just please contact us. But otherwise, we expect everybody to be there on May 15th at 8 a.m. And, you know, have a nice breakfast in the morning, come with your pencils and pens and your calculator, and we will gladly host you for the day, and you'll get to see what it's like, and it's going to be a good experience. So we hope that we've given you some food for thought and that we've clarified our position. Again, I want to thank Mrs. Mallon and Dr. Feynman for coming and taking some time out of their busy schedule of grading papers and whatever they have to do. I think tomorrow is the AP Calculus examination. So Mrs. Mallon's going to be very excited about having her students finish that and be successful in that. So if there's no other further questions, or if you can, please look over the tape again if you need it, but we appreciate you coming tonight.
And if you have any questions specifically about your daughter and what course she's registered for, if she should be sitting for the exam, please send me an email and I will get back to you in the morning.
That's it's at M. Steins.
M as in Mary, STINES at sacredheartacademyli.org.
Great. Thank you very much. Thanks, everybody. We hope everybody has a great night. We appreciate you, parents. We were almost 100 strong at one point, which is amazing, because that really is almost everyone that has applied for either geometry or AP environmental. So very, very pleased. Thank you so much for coming.